I graduated high school, I was only 17 years old, and I couldn't get into the Army until I was 18. So in the meantime, I took a job in a defense plant in Brooklyn, and from 12 at midnight to 12 in the morning. And we did that until I was drafted into the Army in April of '43. And from there, we went to the staging area in Southampton to go on the invasion, and we were supposed to be in the first wave of the invasion, but my outfit, 90% of them or 80% of them got diarrhea, and we had to wait 3 or 4 days to get a boat to go into Omaha Beach. And then we went to Utah Beach, and we lived in a foxhole on Utah Beach for 3 months. And we unloaded the ships that were carrying the ammunition and supplies to the troops.
Did you get the diarrhea yourself? Did you get diarrhea yourself?
No. I was lucky. I didn't get diarrhea, but about 80% got. We were there until August, the end of August, and when we moved to Antwerp, he formed a band.
The fact you were in the band, you feel saved your life at least 2 times?
Yes. When I got into Antwerp, I went to a department store, and I found out that they sold instruments. So I went to the back of the store. I was going to go out. When I went to the back of the store, I heard an explosion. If I had gone out, I would have been hit by a buzz bomb. Of course, that whole place blew up.
What was a buzz bomb? What was that actually?
A buzz bomb is like an airplane that the Germans sent over, and they used a buzz bomb to detonate in Antwerp, in England, in London.
Why did they call it a buzz bomb?
It buzzed, and then it stopped, and then it dropped. Then there was a Battle of the Bulge. I was given ammunition and rations, and I was told to go up to the front. So I went to Lieutenant Ludwig, who was the leader of the band, and I said to Ludwig, they want me to go up to the Battle of the Bulge. So he told the colonel that if you take my man out of the band, you don't have a band. So he says, go back to your outfit. So I saved my life by not going into the Battle of the Bulge. I must have had good luck somewhere along the line, because it's an unnatural thing to happen. And that's how it saved my life.
Now, why is it you gave up music or clarinet after you got out?
I don't know. I just gave it up.
You didn't have the opportunity to play in a band?
No, because I only played the clarinet. It was enough. I had what I felt was enough.
My name is Morris Liebhaber. I was born in Warsaw, Poland in 1922. My parents were also born in Poland, and my dad migrated to the United States when I was a half a year old, and he had to wait 5 years till he was able to bring us over. So when we did go over, they introduced me to my father, who I had never really seen, as he left when I was 5. But we had pictures anyway. We came on Ile de France, took 5 days. It was a beautiful trip. I remember my mother woke us up at, I don't know what time, to see the Statue of Liberty. After Uvea, they sent us to, we went to, I think, Roya-Namur, an island in the Pacific, a little island which we got hit on February 12th, 1944. The Japanese hit us. They had a picnic, dropping bombs. They really had a picnic. No, the Pearl Harbor was the worst. This was the second. I mean, it was in a book. I read it. but I never saw anything further than that.
And that island was what?
Roy and the Moor. A little lot, 7/8 of a mile long, half a mile wide. And while on the island, we had the Corsairs. This was interesting. The pilots, when they had to carry a 500-pound bomb, was not a problem. I mean, they were, look at their life. But when they had to carry a 1,000-pound bomb, they were a little bit shaky because, look, like I said, they were nervous. Anyway, Lindbergh came out. Why or how or what for, I don't know. Anyway, they were going to fly the Corsair with a 2,000-pound bomb. And he said he was going to take out, so they didn't have a bomb rack. That's where my trailer came in. They worked out of my trailer. They made the bomb rack. He took it off, the 2,000-pound bomb, 1/3 of the runway, and he dropped it on enemy territory. Then we're talking sometime later, put 4,000 pounds on. The 2,000 pound and 1,000 on each side. Whereas our pilots would be shaken for 1,000. Now, look, it was their life, so I can't blame them. He took that off. When they were building when they were getting ready to go, I asked them, you think you can take up 6,000 pounds? We were talking, I was just standing, he asked me where I was from. I said I was New York. Then I asked him the question, you think you can take up 6? He said if they can put it on the airplane, he'll take it up. He took up the 4,000 pound. The plane seemed like it didn't want to leave the runway, but he got it up. Anyway, and like I said, after that, he went to the Philippines for some reason to show the Army or whoever there to how to fly an airplane properly with proper armament. Mm-hmm. I mean, with all his story, him being anti-Semitic, I know that he was and everything else, but I'm just saying what he did during the war. As your replacement came in, the machinists came in, they took me off the line and they put me, get ready to go home, back to the States. So, in other words, we were out 13 months. Aboard ship, there was Army guys. They were going for reassignment. After 3 years overseas, they were bleary-eyed, and we were going home. And I want to tell you something. After 30-day furlough, a few of us asked to go back overseas. We felt that the people, you just couldn't imagine what you couldn't get into the habits again. It was entirely different. I can understand how these guys feel coming back from Iraq and all that, wanting to go back to their buddies. Once a Marine, always a Marine. You have that feeling that they brainwash you right in the start, that you're always a Marine. And the respect, it's unbelievable the respect I get when I wear the hat and people see me. The life, the whole experience of the Marine Corps is really something. I mean, I cherish it, and she's surprised also, my wife, but it's really something that I'll always remember. But you have a different feeling, different thought of life. You think differently of life.
In what respect?
Well, you cherish it a little bit, and you want to see. I mean, when we talk about the war today, I bring the boys home. It's useless. I mean, they're killing people for no reason at all, American boys. I shudder when I see this. I can't help myself. I think it's brutal. These young people coming home the way they are. And not enough is being done for them. It's unfortunate, but that's the story. I don't know, get them the hell out of there. That's all I can tell you. Both places, we have no business there anymore.
My name is Stan Saltz. I'm 85 years old. I live in Huntington Point in Florida, married to a great woman. I have 2 children, 4 grandchildren. Originally, I came from New York City, I was drafted into service at the age of 18 and a half out of high school. And
What year was that?
1944. And from there, I said, wow, I can finally be free of my mother's apron strings.
What were your parents' names?
Mary and Abraham.
And they were from where?
They were originally from Austria or Poland, because in those years, the borders were changed every other week.
What the Battle of the Bulge? Tell me what that was about.
Okay, the Battle of the Bulge was the Germans counterattacked the American army.
This was in Belgium? Is that what
This was in Belgium,
Belgium is
in the
between-
Ardennes.
Is it between France and Germany? Is that where
Right,
Belgium?
yes.
Okay.
We were called up and said, we're going to Belgium. The guys whose foxhole I took over gave me a hug. He says, thank God, and took off. He didn't even tell me which way Jerry was. I heard a strange sound. A grrr, grrr. Well, I started to think, hey, it could be Jerry. And I followed the sound. I got out of my foxhole and I crawled over to where the sound was coming from, and there was this German army police dog. His master must have beaten the hell out of him. He was bloody and everything. And I crawled over to him, and I took some snow and I wiped it all over him to get the blood, and I grabbed him by the collar and dragged him back to my foxhole. I had a K-ration, I opened it up and gave it to him. That dog never left my side during the whole war. He went on patrol with me. He could smell a German a half a mile away. I carry his picture in my wallet.
Did you give him a name?
Santa, 24th of December.
Why did you say he may have saved your life? Something else happened later on?
Well, he went on patrol with me, and every time we came across, he could smell a German a mile away. He'd pull my pants and we'd stop. That's how we saved, not my life alone, my whole squad. Great dog. Great human. I called him a human being.
Now, how close were you to? Do you actually physically come in contact with the German soldiers?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Did I kill anybody? Yes. Was I happy about it? Yes. I hated the Germans to this day. At night, probably 2 o'clock in the morning, we got in these rubber boats and we went across the Rhine River. But the Germans found the boats. And we knew we could not go across the river. We hid out in a barn. You remember seeing movies where the Germans come in and with their bayonets, they go? We were there. We were in there.
In the hay, maybe?
In the hay, always in the back. We didn't breathe. I mean, I had my gun ready in case they... And they walked out. I became an atheist April 29th, 1945. And we were walking through the woods, and we came to a clearing, and I saw a strange sight. I saw the barbed wire enclosure. As I got closer to it, I saw guys hanging over the barbed wire fence in striped uniforms and all that. It was the Dachau, the concentration camp. No one ever heard about concentration camps in service. Well, I knew there was something strange because there was a strange odor in the air. And as I got closer, I realized that this was a camp to kill people. I called the captain got it. We opened up the gates, we went inside. That was the day I said, if there were a God, he never would have allowed anything like this to have occurred. I walked into one room in Dachau that had a concrete table. And on the table laid this young woman who was, I would say, 28, 29 years old, 26. Her hands were tied, her legs were tied together, and she was in the throes of giving birth. She was pregnant, and she died that way. The expression on her face haunted me to this day. How could you do that to people? We had a sergeant who had a best friend. He got killed. A shell came right through the window, right through him, and he died. We found a sniper in that town. Sergeant Fredericks said, "Salts, shoot the mother." Well, I had this guy, he knew he was going to die. And this guy is showing me pictures of his family and all that crap. And the sergeant says, "What are you waiting for?" I said, "I don't know. I guess so." I pulled the trigger and turned around and walked away. Later on, I started thinking, I didn't do anything wrong. That guy was trying to kill us, all of us. And I felt better about that.
What happened with your dog, with Santa?
Santa. Well, I was going to take Santa home. We were going from by train from Belgium, Germany to Le Havre, and the train slowed down to a stop. And Santa jumped off the train because he would not, his normal body functions, he would not do anywhere but on the ground. And he jumped off, and the train started up, and I lost him, and my whole squad cried for a week steady, because that dog saved our lives, all of them. And in fact, right now, tears come to my eyes when I think of it. He, amazing.
Did you ever have any pets since then? Did you yourself?
No, no pets.
No one could ever replace Santa.
No. No one could replace Santa.
Name is Bernard Manners. It is changed from Bernard Murowitz. I was born in the Bronx in New York on what was then Bathgate Avenue. It was a market area. And
What was your birth date?
pardon?
Your birth date?
Birth date is 5/19/23. When I was 16,
Okay.
I hitchhiked up to Canada and tried to join the RAF. Only you had to be 17. So I told him I was born in 1922. But I'd gone up with a friend of mine, and I told him, remember, not 23, 22. Famous last words. I said, I'm not 16, I'm 17. He said, look, your friend told us you were born in 1923, not 22. So he called my father, and he told me he must come up there to pick us up. I was lucky my friend was with me then, because he'd have killed me. Anyhow, he came and he drove us home. Then when we got into the water, actually as soon as I was 18, I enlisted. The first place they sent us to was in Miami, Florida. There was a hotel at that time, but there was a movie going on at that time at the hotel. So our training was we used to run to breakfast, run down to the hotel, watch the making of the movie, run back for lunch, run back to see him photograph in the afternoon, and run home.
Who was in the movie?
I don't remember their name.
Mickey Rooney.
It was two.
Mickey Rooney?
Mickey Rooney. Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember who
And those twins.
those two young sisters
And they were
were.
twins.
Did you get to meet Andy Rooney?
No,
How about the twin sisters?
no. And they pulled me out, and they told me that they're sending me to to pilot training.
So what was tell me about the B-17. What was the significance of this plane?
The reason they got the name Flying Fortress, when that plane was introduced, and there were reporters there, this one reporter looked at it because it had guns in the nose, guns in the tail, guns on top, guns on bottom, guns on the sides. And this one reporter looked at it, he says, "My God, it's a Flying Fortress." And that's where it got the name, the Flying Fortress.
At what point did they ship you overseas?
After, when I went to Dyersburg, I met my crew. And from there they sent us to England.
You went
And
by England by boat.
yes, the planes were delivered like other people, primarily women pilots.
Your first mission, you were sent to Berlin. And do you recall that mission?
I remember that we were heading like I'm heading towards you. And over there, like where the picture is, the sky was blocked with smoke. So we talked to each other. We said, "Boy, I'm glad I'm not going there." The next thing that happened, the whole thing started turning. Before you knew it, there it was right in front of you. And that's where we headed.
And what was that smoke? Was that the smoke from shrapnel?
Yes,
So it was anti-aircraft fire.
yes. That's what it was. Luckily, in our particular group, we lost no planes.
How many in your group?
How many planes?
Yes.
27.
Now you say you didn't lose any planes ever, or on that day?
No, that day.
We're flying to somewhere in Germany. You completed your bombing run, and then what happened?
On the way back, we were shot down. We lost all 4 engines. I told my crew to bail out, but they refused. They said, "Don't worry, you're going to land." I told them they're crazy, but I had no choice but to stay with the plane. Anyhow, I told our navigator, Charlie Boone, I said, "Fly us afield." So he found a small fighter base.
So when you got hit and your engines all went off, or you shut them off,
I shut him
they went
off.
off. What was your elevation at that point?
Oh, about 28,000. What we did is we kept in enough of a downward glide to keep us above flying speed.
If you got below it, you'd lose control.
I don't know how you'd lose it, but you'd lose it. Well, we landed luckily at the very beginning of it, and we still ran off the end. And we hit the dirt, the plane did this, and then dropped. And we all sighed of a sigh of relief, because it went a little bit, and then stopped. Well, the war ended. We were asked if we wanted to see Auschwitz. Of course we did. Well, they gave us a Jeep. We were driving to Auschwitz, and all of a sudden, we were attacked by a group of Nazi soldiers. The war was over. They attacked us anyhow. Luckily, a bunch of MPs came by at that time and chased them off. So we went with them back to their base, and they gave us guns. On the way back from them to going towards Auschwitz again. This same group thought we still didn't have armament. They started attacking us again. Now my engineer, he had a special hate for them, and they had attacked and killed his brother when the war started. So with him, as soon as this group attacked us, he machine gunned them. And that made him feel 1,000,000% better.
Was he Jewish?
No. When we got to Auschwitz, we went in and we saw the camp. They showed us the ovens, which still had men in them and women. And the reason they didn't take them out was Eisenhower. He said to leave the bodies in them and that everybody in the area should be brought by so they can't say they never saw anything. One man, a mayor from the close town, and his wife went home and committed suicide.
The people that you went with that were not Jewish, what was there? Did you discuss what they saw?
Oh yeah,
What did they feel?
they were horrified. They had hated the Germans before, now they hated them even more.
My name is Albert Schneider. I was born in the Bronx, November 4th, 1923.
Now, what did your father do when he lived in Poland?
He
He came to the United States when he was 17?
When he was about 17, he came to the United States, and they became a tailor. They get what the name was. He was a Schneider, which was Jewish for tailor.
So who was it decided his name should be Schneider?
I think the Department of Immigration when he came in, I think. I just turned 19. Just turned 19. I went to the Army, enlisted for the Army Air Corps.
Where did you go for basic training?
To Miami Beach, Florida. These were all kids who never traveled past Coney Island. I remember going down the train, when the train hit Jacksonville, somebody yelled, "There's a palm tree." And everybody made a dash to the window to look at a palm tree.
Where did you stay?
And stayed in a place, the Coral Reef Hotel, was right on the ocean.
Did you have training at the hotel, or did they take you to a base to have training?
Well, you went marching on a golf course, so on. But we were in the hotel for living quarters for eating and so on. We were on 36th and Collins. I think we ate at a hotel on 32nd and Collins. Starting January, we went with a group to Denver, Colorado, to a photo school. We were there 3 months in the photo school. Then from there we went to Rome, New York, the replacement center. But I remember one thing about prejudice. We grew up on Memphis Place. It was 2 blocks long, and there was one building. There was all black families. I went to school with all black families. We had no prejudice. When I got to Rome, New York, from Denver, the first day they assigned us to barracks. We went to sleep, and morning we wake up, we hear marching. We look out the window and see all black troops. That's the first signs I saw of segregation. Had no idea that blacks were segregated. Had a white officer in charge, but the troops were all black. That's when I first realized it was prejudiced.
So the Army is the first time you saw
That's the first time
segregation.
there was segregation. Yeah, I went to, when I lived in the Bronx, I was about 7 years old. I went to Yiddish school to read and write Yiddish. I would write home in Yiddish. My father got a big kick out of that until I went overseas, or the mail was censored. So all mail had to be censored by somebody at the office, and nobody in the office knew Yiddish, so the mail first had to go to London, and took a God's eternity to get home, so I went back to writing in English. That's in the Ardennes, which is the Battle of the Bulge.
So how close were you to the actual action?
I remember, fortunately, but I didn't know until years later, I remember standing out in the evening looking at the fireworks. It was like a 4th of July display, but this was the actual fireworks from the Battle of the Bulge from Bastogne. We were very close to Bastogne.
How close were you say you were?
I think it had to be within 10 miles. In fact, I took French in high school, 3 years of French, but it didn't mean anything. But in Virton, Belgium, where we used to be, we had a guardhouse. So I used to stay near the guardhouse and got acquainted to some French kids, you know. So there were 2 sisters there we're friendly with. And then I picked up French, got very fluent in French. I remember the sisters invited me one day to dinner. They're asking questions in the United States, so on, and they asked about what we eat, certain vegetable. I keep mentioning things. I remember I came to the word corn. I forgot what the French word for corn was. So one of the girls brought out a book with pictures. So I said, maize. They started to laugh. They said, no, that's for the chickens. I used to be an interpreter for them. I remember one of the fellas in that group, these were young fellas at 17, 18. They said they're going to a French movie. I said, oh, good. I think I'll see a movie in French. I got there, watched the movie. I was so disappointed. It was a Wallace Beery picture, which I hated Wallace Beery. And it was an English dialogue. Just the French came along with the titles that were in French. To me, the war was different. People think it was a horrible thing. To me, it was a funny thing to say, was the greatest experience of life. I really matured in the service. I don't look back with any regrets.
My name is Irving Miller. I was born December 1, 1923, so that makes me now 87 years old. When we got on the boat the following morning, when we went on deck, there were about 2,000 Japanese on board. I thought we lost the war. These were the Nisei, which were Japanese Americans, and they were going to North Africa with us on that ship. It was interesting. So we were stymied at Monte Cassino, and we were withdrawn to Naples, my outfit, and we got on landing craft and made an end run north of Monte Cassino at a place called Anzio Notugno, and we stayed on the Anzio beachhead for 4 months, long months, in which we were shelled constantly, and we were bombed constantly, night after night. So it was a day-to-day survival. We, of course, received some casualties.
Were you retaliating? Were your guns being used?
Of course, we were constantly doing what we call counter battery fire. So when they would shoot, we would shoot back. You know, it was a great war if they didn't shoot back. It was a great war if they didn't shoot back. Joke. So anyway, one day, just the experience, you know, one of our men was hit in the stomach with shrapnel, unfortunately, and I had to help carry him back maybe 3 or 4 miles to the rear to find a first aid station. We carried him on a litter about 4 miles to the rear. We don't know if he was alive or dead. Now this went on for a long 4 months, incessantly. We, of course, were on our way to Alsace at the time, which is northern France, which is right on the Rhine River there. But we're in Besançon, and there was a division, or parts of the division, that were in Bruyères that were surrounded by the Germans. And they were getting terrible casualties. And we were support artillery at the time. And who came in to support them and get them out were the Nisei, the Japanese American soldiers. And the Nisei, we call them Nisei, saved this battalion and got them out, but they suffered terrible casualties. Now, while they were surrounded, we were shooting in shells. We would put in food or candy bars into the shells to shoot in shells so the American soldiers that were surrounded could have something to eat. And it was a very cold winter, and it was like sitting in an ice box, you know. Well, consequently, I got a case of frostbite, trench foot, and they sent me back to a hospital. I was taken off the ship. I could have walked off, but they didn't let me walk off, so they had to take me off in a stretcher to make it look good.
What was that like coming off the ship? Was there a lot of press there? Or
Oh, I can't remember that.
The war's ended, and here comes the conquering heroes, and you weren't exposed to.
I can't remember. I don't know whether there was a band playing or this or that. You know.
My name is Gilbert Colin. I was born in the Bronx on August 16th, 1925, in a hospital on Grand Concourse. My father didn't pay rent, and in the middle of the night, in the middle of the morning, at 3 o'clock in the morning, he moved us all up to a farm. We were the only Jews in the area. At that time, there was a draft, and on your 18th birthday, you had to register for the draft, which I did on August 16th. By September or October, I was in the Army, and I had my basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama. I had 17 weeks of basic training. Came home for 2 weeks, was sent to Newport, Virginia, went on a Liberty ship, took 30 days to reach Oran, Africa at that time. I threw up, I was seasick every day of the 30 days. I was known as the Yeshiva Heaver, which at that time was funny, yet it wasn't funny. And we landed in Oran, Africa, where you froze at night and sweated during the day. I was sent as a replacement at Anzio, and we pushed out of Anzio, and that was my first time in combat. We went into combat, and the Germans were always on the hill looking down at you, and we were always running uphill. And I lost a lot of my friends who were 18, 19, 20 years of age. And I was just a fortunate person that I wasn't killed. We were relieved by a Japanese outfit, the Nisei, called 442nd, which was the most highly decorated and the highest casualties in the Army. Their parents were in the internment camp in California. A lot of them were from Hawaii, and a lot of them were from California. First time I saw death, I was in a state of shock. And there happened to be a chaplain. And the shells are going overhead, and he says, sit down by the tree. And I sat down, and he says, when you go into a garden, and I look at him, he says, hear me out. He says, when you go into a garden and you want to pick flowers, what kind of flowers are you going to pick? And I just couldn't understand where he was coming from. Shells are going over, and he's talking about picking flowers in a garden, because I had witnessed my friends being blown apart and laying there. And he says, when you go into a garden, you want to pick flowers that appeal to you. You're not going to pick a weed. You're not going to pick a flower that's dying. I said, no. He says, well, in that way, God picks the best for himself. We came to be relieved with the Nisei, and I was taken back what they call a Reppel-Deppel, where you got a rest. And they took us to Rome, and we stayed in Mussolini's mansion. He had a beautiful mansion with a swimming pool and marble. And then we went back up front, and I tripped, and they thought that I broke my wrist. So the medic gave me morphine and put me to sleep. And the next thing I knew, I was in a hospital in Livonia.
Well, getting back to where you stayed at Mussolini's palace, you said?
Yes.
Was he, had he been executed at this point?
No, I happened to be on furlough, and I had seen him strung up by the partisans. He was already strung up. It was outside of Milan. I don't remember the name of the city. They hung him by wire by the ankles, and with his mistress, Clara Petracci. And I'll never forget her skirt fell over her head, and her bottom was exposed, and an elderly woman got a box and pinned up her skirt to her ankles. And I always said that if the world would walk through an army hospital, there might not be any wars. You saw a lot of suffering. I was with a group there was one man who wanted to be a movie actor. He was very, very good looking. He was in an explosion and had his face disfigured. There was another soldier who played the violin. He lost an arm. There was a fellow who wanted to be a dancer. He lost a foot. So it just seemed ironic that all these things happened to these individuals who wanted to make something of themselves, but unfortunately couldn't and didn't.
And the war ruined their...
I'm sorry?
The war really changed their lives.
It changed their life and changed mine. I still have nightmares. I was very bitter when I left the Army. I had very bitter experiences in the Army. I was in combat. I lost many, many friends. One in particular, if I could break away for a moment, when we were in action, the lieutenant wanted a squad at night to reconnoiter the German lines at night, and my squad was picked. I was the only Jew in the company, in the squad, and a man and a young guy by the name of Deneen from Canada said, "I don't think Gil should go." And the lieutenant said, "Why?" And he says, "Because that's SS territory, and you know Gil is Jewish, and if he's ever captured, you know what they'll do to him." And not that I was a hero, and not that I was patriotic, but there was a little patriotism during that time, and I says, "No, it's my duty to go." But the lieutenant ordered me to stay, and this Deneen took my place. And the squad never came back. So because of him, and it brings tears to my eyes every time I think of it, that he saved my life. I still think of the time I was in battle. I think the world today is in chaos. I think that the people in this country don't know that we are at war. I think they're very complacent. And maybe I'm saying that because I'm a little bitter, but I think I have a right to be. Not that I consider myself a hero, but it's just, it's very hard to explain.
My name is Gerald Burberry. I was born in Frankfurt am Main in Germany 1925. But as things went on, the life in Germany for German Jews were just like American Jews in the United States. We were integrated in the community, we had a normal life, And when Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, things started to change. I don't have to go into the history. It is well known and documented. After Kristallnacht, a German policeman came to our house a couple of days later and said that my father has to come to the police station. At that time, I found that my father was deported from Frankfurt, Germany, from the police station by the Germans to a concentration camp by the name of Buchenwald, which is also in Western Germany. After 4 weeks, I think, my father was released from the concentration camp because of his 4 years of military service. The United States had a very strict immigration policy. You could only immigrate under a number system. And my quota number, my parents' quota number, came to December 1939. The war broke out in September. It was June 1939, and I entered a kinder transport, well known, organized by a British company, Jewish company called the Bloomsbury House. And they took a group of children, I don't know the number, but we were quite a lot of children. By that time I was 13 years old, 13 and a half years old, and I believe I was one of the oldest children on the transport. I mean, there were other children my age, but they were mostly young, very young children. They opened up the British military to all branches to friendly aliens, as long as you passed the category. And I volunteered for the army, and they took me in, and I went to basic training for 6 weeks. They came to me and said, "We would like you to go to gunnery school as an instructor." Big deal, I was 18. I said, "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't join the army to be an instructor in gunnery school. I came to fight the Germans." By that time, I haven't heard from my parents. And I've heard nothing from my parents other than when the war finally ended in 45, I got information from the Red Cross that they were killed. After Dunkirk, and we were the replacement parts, and I was in the Desert Rats, Montgomery's outfit. We left England on D-Day, and there again fate intervened. My tank landing craft, as the tide went out from England, you know, the channel has tides, as the tide went out, our landing craft got stuck on a sandbank in the channel, and we stuck there overnight. Had to wait for the tide to come back and pick us up and go over to. So I landed on the British, with the British troops, not on D-Day, but the next day. So whereas the American troops landed and went into Middle West Germany, where I was born, Remagen, or, you know, in that area, and we went north. So we went to Holland, Belgium, and then Germany. Since we went through the fields, and I got hit by a 75 millimeter antique tank gun in the right front sprocket of my tank, a very weak part of the tank. The bullet, the shell, went right into the ammunition next to me. And we went out like this. I mean, 1, 2, 3, we were out of the tank because there's no time. So the bullet went into the ammunition, but the ammunition is that big, and the head that comes off is only this side. But the shell, the anti-tank shell, came at the bottom of the tank where the tracks are, and hit my ammunition through the front of the tank. And because of that, we had about 3 or 4 seconds to exit the tank. At one point during the war, I had we got some prisoners of war that gave up, surrendered, you know, infantry. And I had to bring them back to our lines. So I had them from where we were, I had to march them back to our own lines, nighttime already.
Did you have any personal conversations with any of these?
No, but I had conversations from my own troops. And when they knew that the Germans were still there, they didn't know that I was taking back prisoners.
Right.
And in the dark, you don't see what uniform you're wearing. But they told me that we heard your voice.
In German?
Yeah, left or links or rechts, it's not a big deal. But we knew it was you. So they didn't shoot at me. The recruiters came to me and offered me another term, and 1 year and 2 years, would you stay, we need you, and all that kind of bullshit. So if I had stayed eventually, I could have gone up in ranks, but I had only one thing in mind: go to America.
Okay.
I was planning to go to America the day I left my parents in 1938, 39, because we were ready, my parents were ready to come to the US in December 1939, because that's when our quota number was due. And with what my father and mother went through as far as losing the business and losing everything else, to this day I don't know how they managed. Life really didn't, other than that there was nothing, no activities, no social activities, other than your own family that was still alive. There were not many. There was nothing on, we just day in, day out, the same thing, we're going to America, you know.